Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Tuesday. It is April the 29th, and I appreciate you being here. Today is the end of the first 100 days of the second Trump term. That is a thing. I'm going to do a little bit of historical context, because there was a time when the first 100 days actually meant something, and they were an opportunity when the members of Congress united behind whoever the heck the president is. They didn't care. They said, you get 100 days. That's what that expression, that's why 100 days matters, by the way. You may not have that historical context. They said, in the first 100 days, the president is going to be able to push forward the agenda, and we're going to get behind it. We're going to see what he does with the time. And if it's not good, then we act. If it is good, great. Americans will tell us that they like it. That was supposed to happen. That doesn't happen anymore. Now we have to do things through executive orders. So it's a very different kind of time. And I want to get into that. Also, the Canadians decided that they are done with being a country, I suppose, and they decided to go full left wing. That's kind of interesting in so much as the historical context matters. And I'm just kind of having this free-flowing thought that under FDR, which was a radical transformation in the United States, those 100 days were such a big deal. We have people in the mainstream media right now writing pieces saying Trump's first 100 days are unprecedented in the history of America. And it makes me think that their history probably goes back to like the 1970s or maybe the 1980s, that they don't actually have any concept of history, which makes sense because we've got a very young group of folks that are now writing. There are very few people, even in my age bracket or older, that are writing these types of pieces. So maybe that's something to do with it. While you guys are watching, we do really appreciate you being here. We make sure that you hit a like over on Rumble. If you're watching us on YouTube or if you're casting it from YouTube, it's the only way you're going to get the 4K feed is over on YouTube. Do that at youtube.com/@KyleSeraphin. If you're ever having problems with our feed anywhere else, it's starting to go pretty well over on YouTube, so we appreciate that. Locals, you can always catch us there. That is kind of, it's on the Rumble engine, though. It's KyleSeraphin.com if you want to support us. You can go and view for free, but if you want to join the community and interact and get some of the benefits back behind the scenes, then that's how you do it. And then lastly, Spotify, it's KyleSeraphinShow.com. I hate doing the shameless plugs, but they are sometimes necessary, so that's what we're doing right now. And again, this is the space. I actually spent the day yesterday after the show doing nothing more than running cables in here to try to clean this space up because it drives me absolutely nuts to have a disorganized cable setup, if you guys can believe that. But that's literally what I spent some of my day doing. It's weird to be your own boss and then demand you're like, clean your workspace, and then it's just me doing it. All right, we're going to go ahead and start with some folks who are sponsoring our program. This is Patriot Protect. You can find the website. It's patriot-protect.com/KYLE. China has an AI program that's called DeepSeek. It's been breached and it's exposed millions of Americans' data. In fact, the Chinese data scraping situation affects most of you that have ever been in federal government. If you've ever done a federal background check, the odds are that you've been scraped up in the OPM hacks and others. These massive breaches basically expose your name, your email address, your relatives, your address that you've lived at, the work history, personal information, so on and so forth, giving cyber criminals an opportunity to target you specifically and steal from you, or to go out and pretend to be you. Both of those things can be incredibly damaging. They when they went and pulled all this kind of stuff out there, threw it across the web, they got set up on these quote unquote data broker websites, which will pay to have access to things that they ought not to have access to. All of those things are ripe for scammers to come after you and to, like I said, impersonate or take your money, take out loans, and so on and so forth, liens on your property. Patriot Protect is one way you can go ahead and solve that problem. Their search and destroy protocol wipes out your personal information from over 100 data broker websites, constantly monitoring for new threats, and it costs about the same as leaving your porch light on. Yeah. So check them out. Again, it's patriot-protect.com/KYLE. The link is in the show description. We appreciate their sponsorship. And additionally, we're going to do kind of a profile. We talked about gold scams on last Sunday. We're going to talk about the need for keeping yourself safe from digital scams for this coming Sunday. So you guys will see one of the co-founders of Patriot Protect talking, just broadly speaking, about what's out there, what they do, and what sort of victimization, what the stats look like for Americans in this country. I think it's going to be a useful conversation for you guys. Let's go ahead and get into today's program talking about, let's start with the youth, shall we? The young, our so-called future. Okay, so I had this actually queued up for yesterday's program, and I don't know why I thought it was kind of interesting, but it didn't quite make it in for the time, and we always end up going over an hour anyway. I don't have any time limit, but it just seems like that's where the attention span lies. If you're in the live chat, obviously the live chat people are always telling me, like, go longer, like, say more things. Here, look, here's our live chat already going, talking about God knows what. You guys, I feel like 80% of the conversation that happens in the live chat has nothing to do with what's going on in the screen or what's going on in the program. But so be it. And then people go back and listen. The polling says, this is coming from NBC News, and I found this interesting in a moment when we were looking at elections in Canada, the first 100 days of the Trump term. Young Americans are more likely to feel lonely and anxious about the future. Lonely, comma, and anxious about the future. Then I found this kind of funny, because you'll remember when we start talking about the younger generations, you go millennials, Gen Z, I guess Gen Alpha now, the more likely you are to find people identifying with alternative sexualities and like not real things. Men who aren't sure whether they're men or young men, boys, when not sure if they're actually girls, whatever that means. And then at the same time, they have these like alternative, gender categories and so on. So the second follow-up story to this is that young men and women are taking the gender gap to staggering new levels, almost like that there is a big difference between male and female. And it plays out rather obviously when you start asking people questions, regardless of how they self-identify. Our biology kind of leads us one way or another. All right, so these young Americans are feeling more lonely. There's a stark divide between the youngest generations and adults in the two oldest in terms of loneliness and anxiety. I can tell you what those things are without even looking at the polling. I'll go through, by the way, the polling was highly scientific, done through SurveyMonkey. So that's just people who opted in and wanted to fill in. This is going to be NBC readers. I don't imagine there's a huge cadre of NBC readers that are in the Gen Z, but Gen X, Gen Z, boomers, etc. They're all kind of striated out. 29% of U.S. adults under the age of 30 say they feel lonely and isolated from all those around them. Let me give you just a real quick example of what that looks like, because I saw a young gal under the age of 30 who was going to the grocery store yesterday. Now, I was not lonely. I had a 4-year-old boy sitting behind me in my truck. And as we drove in through the parking lot of H-E-B, which is one of the major grocery stores and chains in Texas, we're driving, speed bump, and there's a stopping space. Now, I saw an old man walking through. He probably was 150 pounds overweight, and he was on oxygen. And that's kind of sad to see, people who have just completely let themselves go. But, he's in the little, the fat guy scooter, the rascal that goes around and carries his groceries, and he's cruising on out. Didn't even look. And that is a new thing that I'm seeing. People have built up this high trust tolerance that they don't even look to see whether or not somebody is driving at them. This guy didn't look. Maybe his head didn't turn. I don't know. He didn't look like he was in great shape. Then I passed through the area where the customer traffic is supposed to go on. It's the checked off yellow, the pedestrian aware, stop for pedestrian, multiple stop signs. I got through that, and I went into the driving part of the parking lot. And I noticed this gal, and she was impossible to miss because she was very weird looking to me. She looked like an alien. She was under 30. Her face was full of injections of some kind. Her lips were far too prominent. Her face and her cheeks were far too smooth. She had dark roots and blondish crazy hair. She looked like she was a mixture of some kinds of races because she had a darker tinge, but it was very light skin. So I don't know if she was black or if she had Asian or whatever. It doesn't matter. She was wearing yoga pants that screamed, "Look at my butt, please." They were in a pink color. So she was wearing gym clothing. But she's wearing gym clothing without ever having been to the gym, pretty obvious by the amount of makeup on her face. She was giving Kristi Noem a run for her money. And she went from the back of the parking lot. She must have traveled over 100 yards to the area where I was, because I was slowly waiting for this old guy to go past so I could see the people around me. And you can't help but notice somebody wearing pink yoga pants. And as she goes walking, not once did she even look up from her phone. She was staring. She was so immersed in whatever technology she was in. Maybe she's reading Kyle Seraphin Twitter posts about how we don't have a pipe bomber suspect yet. I don't know. But she couldn't break herself free from her phone to even look up to see if the 8,000 plus pound truck that I'm driving with a chugging diesel engine might run her over. It didn't even occur to her. That's why people are lonely. That's why they're anxious about the future, because they're going to be alone for the foreseeable future. You're not going to meet anyone if your face is stuck down in your phone. I don't care if you're swiping. There's no meaningful connection. In the meantime, my son and I have our heads up. We're looking around as we go in. People make eye contact with us. They say things to my kiddo because he's really cute and he's tiny. He's like a little miniature person, and he walks around and he has actual words and paragraphs, even though they don't often make sense. He's given me some sort of treatise on how he needs money. I had 3 older people who must have been 25, 30 years older than me walking around, and my son is telling me, I need $5. And this lady perks up, and she's a grandma. You could tell. She looks over and she sees this cute little guy sitting in the cart. I need $5, he said, because I don't have $5. And the lady goes, you're going to be in a lot of trouble if you don't learn to negotiate with them now, And we had this human interaction like you do. I'm not lonely when I go out. These people under the age of 30 are lonely because they don't even know that there's other people in the world. And they're so fixated. They're so fixated on technology where there's this fake connection. And we've done this multiple times on our program that calls in. People call in from our audience and they let me know if they had the opportunity to wipe out the internet. It's probably one of the worst things that's been done for human connectivity. Only 15% of respondents who are members of Gen X, that's between 45 and 64, say that they feel lonely or isolated most or all the time. The people in my age bracket and above do not feel that same thing. And the other reason is probably because most of us have realized that human connection is really critical. And even if we're not married and put together our own little family unit, we do have a pseudo family of some kind. You have friends, you have people around you that are not going anywhere, right? There was a time when human connection was more valuable than whatever's going on your crappy phone. My kids were looking at our TVs the other day, and we've got a couple of TVs, and I don't know how big they are. They're 60 inches or 75 inches or some ridiculous amount of space on a wall. And my kids were making fun of the fact that our guest bedroom has a little 30-something inch TV. It's an extra one. It's one of the monitors that I'm no longer using. It has TV function as well. And they go, there's a funny little tiny TV hanging out in our guest room for when our grandparents come in. And I said, that was a huge TV when I was a kid. You guys remember? It wasn't that long ago. When I was in college, a 30-inch tube was big. The people who had those huge projectors, they were few and far between. You'd go over there and watch on that 4:3 aspect ratio. There's such a difference that's going on right now. So it's not surprising to me that these kids are anxious and lonely, and maybe that's why they vote the way that they do, and then maybe that's why the future that they're looking for is the one that they do. I realize that we don't have historical context. I'm going to do it with comedy. We don't always start off with like a palate type cleanse. This is actually so relevant to me because as I saw it, I went like, yeah, I actually also have this wrong in my brain. I want you to consider this. When did Pablo Picasso die? Our folks in the chat, can you tell me? Do you know when Pablo Picasso died? I'm going to drop it on you right now in the form of comedy because it actually says a ton, so much about what we know and what we don't know about what's going on right now. And maybe that's why you end up with mainstream media outlets talking about this is an unprecedented 100 days. It is, but only because we've broken the societal norms. And it wasn't Donald Trump who did that.
Did you guys know this? Pablo Picasso, you know when he died? He died in 1973. Did you know that? I thought he died in 1380. I almost shit. 1973? Picasso had a car. Is that unbelievable? Pablo Picasso was driving around Spain in like a Honda Civic listening to Black Sabbath on the radio. Ozzy Osbourne and Pablo Picasso were working at the same time. He saw 6 Super Bowls. I thought he lived next to a blacksmith. The guy's like at home watching the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs on a colored television set, drinking Mountain Dew. And some of you might be like, Mountain Dew, that wasn't out in 1970. It was. Do you know when it came out? I thought like maybe 1975, 76. 1940, Mountain Dew came out. Hitler was jacked up on Mountain Dew. He was like in a bunker like, do the Dew! Or what? I can't do impressions, but...
Do you guys realize it? By the way, every single person in the chat got that wrong. All of you guys got it wrong because none of us have that perspective. We haven't actually lined that thing up. I think it's so critical for us to realize that even when we are really well informed, and I consider myself pretty well informed, many of you in the audience also well informed based on what I see you guys talking about, and we don't even know. We don't know when Pablo Picasso died. Like, people were guessing in the 1700s. People were saying at the turn of the century in the 1900s. No, isn't that crazy? Right? Mountain Dew, out since 1940. I'm sure that's true. I'm sure there's a lot of things that we don't have perspective on. And because of that, we fall victim to all kinds of chaos and craziness. We really do. I'm going to hit a story real quick that I think is interesting. I saw this in Revolver News. It was shared with me by a retired FBI agent. This is worth noticing. A lawfare, actually, this I think was shared by Mike Howell. Well, I'll play a clip of Mike Howell as well. A lawfare case that you're not supposed to notice just got darker. FBI lies, fake evidence, and a dirty judge coming from Darren Beatty over at Revolver. The question, have you seen the meme? And it's the astronaut and the one behind him is pointing a gun. I don't even know where that comes from. So maybe somebody will tell me. I don't know what the perspective on that is either. But it's like always was. It's the always was, always were, it always was meme. The FBI has had so many problems since its inception that even people who work there probably didn't realize it until they started taking a critical look at it. Not by any fault of their own. This is one of those stories where when you read it, you go, holy crap. What is it that we are putting our money into? Because this is ongoing in the era of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. They haven't withdrawn this case. The DOJ is still running this case. So Pam Bondi, who runs DOJ, still has this happening. This is the story of the One Taste case. It was never about justice. It was always about targeting unconventional wellness companies and turning it into a federal spectacle. This is coming from Darren Beatty. From the start, it was clear that it wasn't a routine prosecution. The charges in this are conspiracy. Let me get it just right because I actually have I've actually got the complaint sitting in front of me here. The indictment, rather. Okay? It's craziness. The story is all about whether or not using sexuality to heal, which, by the way, is not a particularly conservative thing. So I'm not a great fan of what these people were doing, but it was about using sexuality to try to heal women from trauma or something to that effect. And there's a very salacious indictment that has to do with whether or not they're going to be doing like all kinds of sexual healing and petting and this other kind of nonsense and the stroking of women's genitals for 15 minutes. But the question then becomes whether or not there's a crime there. And the crime that is alleged is totally ridiculous. And it continues onward today. There's a single count of conspiracy. Meanwhile, some of the stuff that Darren Beatty points out in here is that victims were encouraged to go forward to the victims fund that the DOJ puts on and collect $30,000 worth of victim money. They introduced evidence, which were supposedly contemporaneous journals that were being kept by the so-called victim, except the journals were generated for the made-for-TV movie that came out with Netflix. I'm going to put this story. It's actually worth reading. There's no way I can cover the entirety of it and how nutty it is. I'm going to put the story in the links over at KyleSeraphin.com today. So if you guys go over to our locals channel and check it out, it'll be in the comments under today's video. I want you to read it. It's a single agent who's like running this case out of New York. By the way, the victim was supposedly, they're prosecuting a company that was out of San Francisco, which they do have the ability to do, but none of this stuff is changing. And it leads me to this broader question. Like, who in the hell is running the game? You guys think that we have people like Pam Bondi. Shouldn't this have been shut down? Shouldn't Pam Bondi theoretically have been the one who was in charge of DOJ and came through and be like, okay, what are all the weirdest things that we are doing? The most fringe and novel interpretation. By the way, January 6th investigations and January 6th prosecutions were all using novel takes on laws that have previously not been done. The story of Amy Nelson, who's been on this program. Her story was a novel use of honest services sector fraud, or whatever the hell the name of it was, that was lobbied for by Amazon. So DOJ is doing the bidding of corporate masters. In this case, this was like a reaction to the Me Too movement, like believe all women. Here's this crazy lady saying these things. We better go out there and do whatever it is that she wants us to do. We're going to go out there and do a prosecution where she essentially made things up, but the female judge in New York will not let this case drop and wants it to carry on. Is just washing away all concerns about weird evidence, weird process, the fishing expedition, and so on. So I'm going to post this. I want you guys to actually read the story, especially the part where people are getting paid out before there's ever anything proven in a court of law. says one witness received up to $30,000 for a single charge that's never been proven. Others were told through text message and phone calls that if their applications were denied, they still might get paid later as long as the case goes through. So when the victim actually has a financial incentive to see the FBI go after it, this is abuse. This is what lawfare looks like, but this is what weaponized government is. In other words, the government comes in with a specific mindset. It comes in to achieve a goal. I thought we kind of knew this was an issue. Mike Howell's the one who sent me this case. He also pointed out the fact that for the last 4 years, we've seen some really wild stuff go on, including the auto pen thing. All of the people that are supposed to have immunity because of Biden's auto pen, we're still not seeing any push towards going after those folks. Wasn't that what everybody was supposedly voting for? And when Biden signed off on those pardons, it was like, oh, well, now he's pardoned them. And then Donald Trump has said, well, these pardons are not binding. They're not valid simply because of the way that they were done. So we're seeing talking out of both sides of our mouth by the conservative sort of MAGA mouthpiece types, but not by the really conservative people. And Mike Howell is that, and he works with the Oversight Project. He's associated with Heritage. I think they may have spun off and kind of done their own thing right now. Here he is testifying, kind of giving people an example of all the things that you say are a problem have been noted as a problem, so act as such, and we're not seeing that.
Recently, we released an investigation that discovered that the Biden White House made prolific use of an auto pen device to sign pardons and other presidential documents. Given President Biden's lack of mental capacity and proof that he himself was not signing the documents, President Trump has declared those pardons to be null and void. Now, this applies to the last-minute pardons of the January 6th committee, and Senator Schiff has stepped out, but this would apply to his pardon as well.
Not everybody got covered by those pardons even, and we're seeing some even more wild stuff. There's some people that are still actually doing some localized investigative journalism. God bless them for doing so. I found this story the other day, and I don't see anyone else covering it, so I want to talk about it. This is Scott Taylor. He's a news reporter for a local TV station, and my understanding is that's out of Washington, D.C. Scott, if I'm mistaken on that, I apologize. It's WJLA TV 7, News in D.C., so yeah, it should be a D.C. station. I know I've seen it before. He's reporting on what he calls an exclusive on the Qatari government giving almost $62,000 in travel expenses to the mayor of Washington, D.C. and 4 staff members in 2023 under the Biden administration for trips to the Middle East. Now, what on earth would a D.C.-based mayor who's funded by the federal government need to do in the Middle East and Qatar? Does she have a big contingency there? Like, Washington, D.C. is one of the worst cities in America when it comes to functionality, crime. They're really happy to hit you with like speed cameras and give you fines for driving through at 26 miles an hour and a 25. But they can't stop people from murdering each other left and right. They can't keep their shot spotter funded to the point where I remember talking to D.C. Metro PD folks. And they're like, yeah, we're doing an investigation. Be really careful driving through this neighborhood. I said, why is that? And they said, well, we had one of our crime scene vans, not a law enforcement vehicle, by the way. This is a CSI type vehicle. So this is a van with evidence technicians in it, driving through one of the neighborhoods in Southeast DC. And just because it had markings that said Metro PD, 6 different weapons opened up and opened fire on the van and just shot through the damn thing. Luckily, the driver was unharmed. But they just had notification that multiple different reports, different types of firearms were used. Just anybody that like saw the vehicle leaned out of their window and took pot shots at the representation, the law enforcement representation of the government of Washington, D.C. And meanwhile, this woman is spending her time flying in 2023, where it was still terrible, out to the Middle East. Why does the Qatari government have money in there? I'm seeing more and more money from Qatar coming in. I've seen a couple of reports talking about how they have thrown crazy amounts of influence into the state of Texas, at Texas A&M. We may play a clip of that later on. There's a ton of foreign money that's playing in. And all of that looks like FARA. What I don't see is these people getting the FBI kicking down their door at 0630 or 0600, the way that Roger Stone was, the way that General Flynn had to deal with these people, the FARA prosecutions, the Foreign Agent Registration Act. Why is that not being looked at in the same way? This looks like a real problem. And here's where it gets broader. Under Trump, in the first 100 days, under Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, they promoted a guy named Steve Jensen. I pointed it out earlier. They put a regime sycophant who was basically happy to co-sign on everything that the Biden administration was looking for out of DOJ. That guy is running the Washington field office, which would cover, for example, the public corruption investigations into Muriel Bowser. You see? It matters who you have. Personnel is policy. Harmeet Dillon tweeted it out today, and it means something. It should. That's why when someone like this, who came out of the private sector and expects results and has been very, very boisterous, we now have Harmeet Dillon getting confirmed in over at DOJ and stepping into the job. When someone steps in that actually might go do the work and is actually scary to people because she's been saying it and she knows how things work because she's been on the other side of the table, you've seen over 100 attorneys resign from the DOJ Civil Rights Division. Again, personnel is policy. If your personnel is compromised, so are your policies. That's my take on that. And it's relevant today specifically. I'm going to read you the story. Exodus of over 100 DOJ attorneys. The division was established in the wake of the 1950 Civil Rights Movement. In fact, that division is problematic in its origin and in its inception because the Civil Rights Acts, they tend to go against the Constitution. Ben Shapiro used to talk about this when I used to listen to him. And it used to get me really thinking. Again, historical context matters. You have to understand what has been. The Civil Rights Act is essentially a second constitution to the United States. It has significant and major disagreements, but it's politically incorrect to say anything about them. It would be wrong to question the Civil Rights Act because after that time, we all realized that there are protected classes in America, and those people need to be treated special and different. And that's how you end up with policies like DEI. That's how you end up with affirmative actions, which on their face are absurd and crazy. And if you go back, I remember actually getting fired from a job 2 weeks in. I did all the interviews in a suit and I drove a car. And then when I got hired on and I showed up, this was in Williamson County as a paramedic. And it was a lesbian who ran this unit of community paramedics and it was all females in the unit. Doesn't matter. I mean, it's a kind of caring profession, but paramedics tend to be males, which is kind of an interesting thing. Males are paramedics overwhelmingly, just like firefighters. And then nurses are the counterpart in the hospital and they tend to be females, right? Like we even nurse, it even sounds like a woman to us in our mind. Anyway, I show up at this female-dominated office in Williamson County. And I showed up on a motorcycle because it was the most efficient means of transportation that I had. And I showed up with a motorcycle helmet, a motorcycle jacket, and the paramedic uniform they gave me, whatever. And I lost that job inside of a week and a half. And I saw my replacement at the uniform store because it was the same place where I went to go find, used guns and stuff like that. It was a uniform and cop shop. And my replacement was this tall, skinny, effeminate gay man. Like flaming homosexual. Isn't that interesting? You just see that there was a certain expectation of what it should look like. Personnel's policy. And when I went to go talk to somebody as an attorney, I said, hey, there's no way that they could just fire me for no reason. I'm a disabled veteran. I'm a licensed paramedic. I have every reason. I just got out of the military. And they said, well, you're a white male and you're heterosexual. You're not a protected class. They can fire you for no reason. They couldn't fire that gay guy, but they could fire you. They couldn't fire that woman, but they could fire you. So you're screwed. We know that because of the Civil Rights Act. That stuff is the way that it came down. All right. I don't trust government. Neither do you. Let's go ahead and do a quick read for our friends over at Silent. Right now, you're seeing on the screen some of the B-roll footage we took while I met the guys. That's Aaron. He's the owner of the company. Silent.com, SLNT.com/KYLE. This is my sleeve, which is holding onto my phone so it doesn't make extra weird noises between government and big tech and corporate America. Yeah, my phone tends to make noises when I'm trying to do the podcast. It buzzes in my ear when there's RF signals coming in. Criminals and others, all the people that might be interested in taking and compromising your freedom, or maybe it's just disrupting your peace. There's no other way to do that except protect yourself. You can do that with Silent and their Faraday products, which block all incoming and outgoing signals into your devices. If you listen to headphones and you're used to like buzzing because it's not connected to your phone, if you're doing Zoom calls and stuff like that, it could interfere. Check out their Silent Faraday products. They're fantastic stuff. They actually work. That's more than I can say for most of the Chinese garbage. Now the Chinese garbage is getting hit with all kinds of tariffs too. So there's that. They have a technology that blocks wireless signals. It gives you peace of mind. It also just gives you peace. So your data is not going anywhere, but also your signal is not just interrupting your audio sound. You can place your device inside, you close it up, whether it's a zip or a snap or a roll, and it's done. Go Silent today at slnt.com/KYLE. Again, silent.com/Kyle. Save yourself 15%. You'll get free shipping on qualifying orders. Check out the E3 Everyday Faraday Backpack. It has 2 independent sleeves. They both are like this, but they actually hook into the bag. You can use them with or without the actual backpack. The backpack works as a carrier if you're going to travel. I've also found that their roll top backpacks are impervious to TSA. It flusters them, and I've had multiple TSA guys not be able to even figure out how to get into the damn bag. So that's cool. Might keep you safe from like thieves and other scumbags. Silent.com, slnt.com/KYLE. Save yourself 15% on them. Link in the show description as per the usual. Personnel's policy, folks. This is a bigger thing. This is going on right now, and this is probably something you're not going to, I guarantee you're not going to hear this anywhere else. There was a story that was put out in Real Clear Investigations. Now, Real Clear Investigations is also, that's Paul Sperry who wrote this one. There's some other people behind it. They have a couple of different umbrellas under Real Clear, including Real Clear Politics. They wrote a hit piece on a guy that's been on our program before. Our archivist, Rose, will probably tell you guys what show it is. Okay? But Kurt Suzdak is the target of this. You remember the honeypot sexting against Donald Trump? The claim is that the alleged Comey honeypot sex team against Trump smells fishy. This was published about a month ago. And it's relevant today because as this thing goes on, the more I read it, and I got it sent over to me a couple times by different agents who know Kurt. Kurt was the person that the Suspendables and a few others recommended as the best deputy director for the FBI. Not Dan Bongino. It's not a personal knock against Dan. It's just that he knows how things work. And if personnel is policy, hiring a whistleblower attorney that has gone head-to-head with the FBI, and you can hear his story long form on multiple different things we've done. Go check it out. It's worth your time. He's funny. He's very, very dry. But Kurt Suzdak is alleged to be a liar over and over and over again by Paul Sperry, who I don't know personally. Follows me on X. They make numerous things. They dox him, by the way. They put his home address out there. They claim that his website is defunct, that he's no longer an attorney, that he's no longer doing business. I know that for a fact that is not true because I know some of his clients. And his claim is that he didn't produce the whistleblowers, which, by the way, is in and of itself incredibly problematic. So therefore, he was lying. These guys are going to find out on the wrong end of things what happens when you go after someone who doesn't mind going after the DOJ, doesn't mind going after the FBI. Who the heck are they? Like a dozen people? 24 people? This is going to be a very interesting little thing. There's going to be more on this story coming up. But again, I'm looking right now at the two different people that you're seeing on the screen. These are what deputy directors look like. Former FBI guys. One of them is Paula Bate, which is what they're currently dealing with. The legacy, that historical precedent, that context that Dan and Cash walked into, they're Paula Bates people. And if you didn't remove everybody in the management, basically everybody who's been promoted to the SES is problematic because they were all approved by this guy. And the second is David Bowditch. He's the previous deputy director, and he left under unknown circumstances. He just retired on a Friday afternoon with no notice to anybody. We didn't know he was leaving. He was a good agent as far as I can tell, and the people who talk about him liked him. And in my very few interactions, which was a couple of minutes in an airport, I think in Denver, going on the way out and the way back to Portland, he seemed like the agent's kind of agent. He was tall, he was big, he's bulky, he's carrying a gun. He had a sense of humor, self-effacing. I asked him if we could save Portland, and he said, 50-50, which is about right for the time. It's really interesting when you see, again, that personnel equals policy. If you're getting rid of people and people see you coming in and they're all running, you didn't see anybody turning and resigning because Bongino or Cash were in. And I'm listening to where the cries are, and the cries are not happening there. For me, that's a big deal. Let's talk about DOJ whistleblowers. Let's talk about people bringing forward malfeasance. It's not going to happen anymore. Let me just tell you real quick. Chad Prather had a chance. They did the new media, like podcast type folks sitting in the White House question room doing the press briefing yesterday. So this got done. A lot of you shared it with me. I got it. Brianna Morello posted this. This is Chad asking questions about what the administration is going to do. Are they going to fix the problems? You're going to be shocked to find out. The answer is basically no.
The DOJ stated on Friday that they were floating the idea of potentially subpoenaing journalists to get access to whistleblowers. We know the last administration did not treat whistleblowers very well. There's numerous ones who, although still employed by the FBI or the DHS, have not received back pay and they've been employed, but they're not reinstated. So I'm wondering, does this administration have, do they believe that we should reinstate the whistleblower, like Agents Garrett or O'Boyle or Friend or, Stevenson with DHS, who blew the whistle on the child trafficking involving the cartels under Joe Biden? He, too, is yet to be brought back. Do we have a position on that?
Sure. Well, for each individual agency, the secretaries of those agencies obviously have deference over who they hire, who they fire, who they promote. I can tell you certainly the president commends anyone who steps out and speaks the truth, especially against the malpractice that we saw over the last 4 years under the previous administration. I could speak to the two cases at the Treasury Department. The two whistleblowers there who blew the whistle on the Hunter Biden tax fraud case have been promoted by Secretary Bessent. So certainly we commend anyone who has the courage to step up and speak the truth. And as for those who unfortunately try to leak, especially classified information to the legacy media to put our troops in harm's way, our law enforcement officials at harm's way, leaks like that will not be tolerated.
Yeah, obviously, you can't leak to the media. That's not a whistleblower activity. For many of you who do not know that, if you're new to the program, you don't understand what the nuances. What Carolyn just said was that nothing is going to happen. What they want to do is they want to tout their successes. And the successes happened with two guys who were in the IRS, who, God bless them, went forward and talked about the Hunter Biden laptop case and the fact that there was a failure to prosecute. But they never lost their job. They never lost a paycheck. They just had their friends be mean to them or something. That was the allegation, that they were being treated unfairly. They didn't like it. Meanwhile, Garrett O'Boyle's coming up on 1,000 days of being without a paycheck. Now, I don't think he wants to go back and work at the FBI. But what we've seen is that some people have done the right thing. We've seen that the media is shrieking about some people getting after it, which is what we've seen over at DHS, which is what we've seen with the ICE folks. We're seeing a bad faith operation happening at DOJ, with a minor upside that people like Harmeet Dillon are coming in that one little space that she's going to be able to control over at the civil rights, which was a weaponized chunk. Every single part of the weaponized government should be addressed, lest we deal with this again in a couple years. Those 100 days that used to be transformative, where someone could come in FDR style and say, this is my sweeping agenda for the American people. I would like to go out and change the way that we do business. That's kind of what Joe Biden said he was going to do, except then he fell asleep and forgot. Trump has not been able to get that done because he has no backing from Congress, which is not traditionally the way it worked. And more importantly, the folks that are moving in, they all have their own pace. And we're seeing a lot of status quo. And we're seeing a lot of it'll take a long time. I did this yesterday and I just shared it because it was kind of funny. The FBI is releasing new information about the January 6th pipe bomb subject. Just kidding. That actually came from January 2nd. That came from January of 2025. That's months ago. And the answer is they still have no names. And they've released nothing. And this case has been going on. There is no political reason not to go and to push that forward. Why would this not be the top priority of any administration? Somebody who was randomly leaving either real or fake pipe bombs around in America City, which is apparently having a mayor run off to Qatar. It's a big deal to not take terrorism seriously. So I can't take the FBI seriously when they can't find one person in a city that is awash in cameras, in federal informants, in multiple law enforcement agencies all over the place and overlapping information. You're telling me you can't identify one person when the cell phone footage or the cell phone tower apparently didn't give you good data, except that they claim that they did. The companies claim that their data is good. I'm fairly confident they knew who this person was in March of 2021. Why wouldn't they? The FBI is can find all and named all of the hijackers within days of 9/11. The FBI is able to pull people up and find kids who are missing within a day or an hour because of the cell phone technologies that we use. I used to sit next to a guy who did what's called CAST. He was a full-time national resource. All he did was dump towers and drop it into these crazy things. They could find the probability. They'd find murder subjects, find out whether or not the guy went somewhere, find out where bodies were dumped because that's where the phone was also found. All kinds of crazy stuff. We were able to identify every single J6er who went inside the building and people who were all on the grass but not on the concrete, right? They were able to identify all kinds of people with geofence warrants and so on. You can't find this person. Give me a break. Give me a break, because we know they had a cell phone. We can see where the cell phone was and where it went, and they were able to track the path. You can't tell me who that was? No chance. Meanwhile, my team got pulled off a person of interest early on, which showed me where the priorities were, and that was in January of 2021. It's ridiculous. Personnel's policy, and it means something. It should set us up for that kind of win. And instead, like I say, we're seeing a mixed bag. It's not a total loss, but Trump 2.0 has a lot of the same problems that Trump 1.0 has. Inertia. The places that got moving right away are moving, and the places that are not are not. All right, speaking about moving, speaking about getting around and doing things, how about we talk about my friends over at Undertac? Underwear. If you guys want to get yourself set up for your whole week, they have a deal right now where it is buy 3, get 1 free. It's undertac.com, UNDERTAC.com. Promo code Kyle. Very, very simple. Undertac, the world's best boxer briefs. They're, sometimes like things come up in your laundry cycle and you get excited about wearing them. That's the case for these. I have been wearing the same kind of undies for the last 16 years, and this was the first thing that made me change my mind. They're designed by Army Special Forces operators. They use them in Africa in the harshest conditions. It's not just about underwear. It's a tactical gear that's built for tough missions and worldwide rucking. I actually wear their ones that are called the Recon when I want to go out and do biking with my kiddos. It's kind of like a Spanx. If you guys were in the military, you know what I'm talking about. It's tactical gear. It's built tough, and they are making a premium modal fabric that's 50% more moisture wicking than cotton. That's a nice option. Keeps you cool, keeps you dry, keeps you locked in. It's got a hidden E&E pocket, so you can store things that you don't want people to find, like a micro SD card if you're a Jason Bourne. It used to be a piece of microfilm, but they changed their mind now. Now we just do micro SD cards. Emergency cash, maybe a handcuff key, or weed, or whatever other shady things you people are trying to hide in your undies. We'll still find it before a good cop and we're searching you. Get a pair of them. You can pair them up with the merino wool socks, the urban hoodies. They're built tough. They keep you comfy. They're mission ready. It doesn't matter if you're at the range, in the field, or you're riding a bike with your kiddos. You're chilling on the couch and you're wearing nothing but your undies. Maybe you're that person. Maybe you're one of those Gen Z lonely people and you don't have anybody and you just want to sit around in your undies. You could do that. Undertac.com. It's undertac.com. The promo code KYLE at checkout. Add 3, get a 4th one for free. And every one of your purchases is going to support veteran-run groups that are fighting human trafficking, so it goes to a good cause as well. Supporting American heroes, securing your junk, complete your mission. Undertac.com. Link in the show description there and a description of what you can get on their little deal. So let's keep pushing onward. I got some other fun stories I want to do. So let's talk about Trump's 100 days. Here it is. In the very, very serious Frontline, ABC News, most Americans oppose Donald Trump doing a 3rd term. How many of you took that seriously? In fact, historical context, the last time we had someone do a 3rd term was FDR, the person that Joe Biden aspired to be. Joe Biden only got 1 term because he was terrible and he's 1,000 years old and he was using an auto pen. He's the human Roomba, as Steve Friend likes to say. Most Americans oppose a 3rd. Can you imagine actually doing a real poll and asking people about something that is expressly forbidden by the Constitution according to amendments, which we had to do because a Democrat wanted to stay in power for life? And a 4th term, by the way, which he died in. They also don't like the idea of us taking control of Greenland or Canada. So say the polling. That's the most important thing that they wanted you to know. Let's see here. 71% of people think Trump is serious about sending American citizens convicted of violent crimes to foreign prisons. There are particular ways you could do that. It's not a great look. 71% of people think that's serious. I don't know if that's hope on the MAGA end or just insanity on the leftist side, but whatever. So be it. 68% think that the United States may want to take control of Greenland. He's mentioned it enough times that it's worth believing that, sure. 62% of people think that he is serious about serving a 3rd term. That's pretty goofy. And 53% think that he might actually try to take control of Canada. Well, it turns out Canada might actually need us, I think. You can't help but look at them and go, what in the hell's going on? How did Canada get so far off? Here's Canadians talking about Canada being basically lost at this point. There's no way around it. This is something, this was a panel discussion at the Bourbon House, and they said, you can't make Canada back again. You can't make it great again. And their most recent election, which just happened, kind of tells you the same story. Unfortunately, I'm going to give you why that guy, I think, was probably not the person that Canadians look for. Even though the Canadians, the Snow Mexicans, are a pretty boring group, they still generally, in the rural areas, look the way Americans do. And in the urban areas, they look the way that urban Americans do, which is to say borderline nuts.
There is no way that Canada can be saved. We have brought in so many immigrants and we have diluted our values to such a high degree that we don't even know what the nation of Canada is anymore. Go to Brampton, go to Surrey, go to Edmonton and Calgary right now. You will not recognize the place that you are in. We're not bringing in the world's best and brightest, folks. We had very high standards for bringing people in, and we were bringing in great immigrants who are contributing to our economy. We are now bringing in people who cost the Canadian taxpayer an average of $3,500 a month, which is more than our elderly get from OA.
Yeah, when you're taking care of people that don't come from your country at a better rate than those who actually do come from your country, you know you're in a bad place. I cannot help but think about Canada in the same terms as Ben Bankis. He's a comedian. He's from Canada, as I understand it. He now lives outside of Austin, so maybe one day he'll come and do a sit down here with me. But every time I think about what's going wrong with Canada, I think about Olivia Chow. Olivia Chow is the mayor of Toronto, And she doesn't actually sound like this. This is Ben doing a voiceover. But in my mind, this is exactly the problem in Canada. You have these people running government. And I promise you, once you hear this, you will never not think of her this way as well.
There is nothing like a library. You just want to come to a library. Maybe you want to take out the Mein Kampf. Maybe you want to take out the Huckleberry Finn or a Catcher in the Rye. Or maybe you're just a homeless person who want to get the internet access to watch a Jewish-made pornographer. Either way, we are giving $100 million to the library so they can buy the most up-to-date book about Marxism and communism.
It's so bad. The Jewish pornographer. I can't do the voice, but I can't not hear it whenever I think about this. The people that are talking about it are serious. But here's the thing. We've done the same thing in this country. I actually thought this was an SNL skit. This is a legitimate congressman named Sri Thanadar from Michigan. You guys can maybe say his name better than I can. I thought this was a spoof, folks. I thought this was a joke. This is a dude who looks like an SNL skit talking about the first 100 days of Donald Trump, and we've seen enough. We need to have an impeachment. How nuts are we that lady is the mayor of Toronto? And yeah, she doesn't sound exactly like that, but she sounds close. And she likes that Mein Kampf. And then this.
This is Congressman Sri Thanadar. Donald Trump has already done real damage to our democracy, but defying a unanimous 9-0 Supreme Court ruling, that has to be the final straw. It's time we impeach Donald J. Trump. The court said the wrongfully deported Kilmer Garcia must be allowed to return and receive due process. Trump ignored it. He ignored the Constitution. He ignored the very checks and balances that keep our democracy intact.
Like, what in the hell's going on here? That guy looks like an AI Indian version of Jimmy Fallon, as you guys said in the chat, like 100%. That doesn't look like a real person. And that person represents Michigan in Congress. I mean, you want to talk about failing? It's insane. That's why NPR says more people give Donald Trump an F. Maybe it's because of the nonstop talk and the fact that they're all on the same page. There's a concerted effort, and they're still losing, by the way, because there's plenty of Americans that are not mad at Donald Trump for what he's doing. Twice as many people said Donald Trump deserves an F rather than an A for how he's handled his first 100 days in office, says a new NPR PBS Marxist poll. They don't say Marxist, but I did. 45% said Donald Trump deserves the failing mark compared to 23% who said he would pass with flying colors. The fact of the matter is it's in the middle. Some of the things he's done are great. The fact they're shrieking about illegal immigration, that's good stuff. There needs to be a whole lot more of it, but it's good stuff. The fact that we haven't actually reformed the most dangerous elements that can actually go out and reach out and touch you, that's not fantastic. They get a little bit of more time, but not much. And they've already lost the beachhead on this one, in my opinion. Maybe we get some of what we wanted for. I said if we got 30% of Donald Trump's promises, we'd be winning. He's doing things at DOD that are pretty awesome. You've got Pete Hegseth out there saying that the COVID mandates were an illegal order. That's fantastic. I'd like to see that kind of leadership move into the other places. We're seeing Treasury do the right things. We're going to see some ugliness because of tariffs, which is what tariffs. Let me say that again, not terrorists. I have to make sure I enunciate. Although we might see that too. We have to figure out that this is going to require some staying power. And so hopefully he's basically said, whatever, piss off, in the same way he was talking about the Project 2025 and saying, I don't know what it is, and then turned around and promoted people that were into Project 2025. That's the hit job on him over at CBS News. He repeatedly distanced himself from Project 2025, and then now he's got people who were help writing sections of Project 2025 in charge of different government agencies. Who cares? It used to be that whenever you pick somebody, the president would just go, okay, there we go. I'm going to nominate this person. That person gets in. You didn't, unless there was some really, really serious, ugly thing that happens. And this legacy goes back to about Clarence Thomas, as far as I can tell, when hit jobs started coming in and people that were being floated out as the president's cabinet, his own advisors to run things, were not just green-lighted. That's relatively new. That's a thing that has changed in our lifetimes. I don't know whose fault it is, but Ben Bankis has an idea. And I don't know that he's wrong. This is the same guy that did the voice for the Olivia Chow video.
Like, things are so bad that even women are looking around going, I probably shouldn't have the right to vote. They're just walking. It's only Indians. They're like, I think this is my fault, actually.
He's talking about that suicidal empathy, that thing where you feel for people so much so that you have to, like one of the jobs of men I found as the husband of a very empathetic, loving, caring, compassionate person. Like, one of the nicest people that you'll ever meet is my wife, and cares about people deeply, like that she barely even knows, and wants to do nice things for them to her own detriment, is that I'm supposed to protect her heart. Men, that's part of our job. We're supposed to go out there and say, like, whoa, 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 whoa. I know that you would give everything that we have to complete strangers, but they're not going to love you back. They don't care. We cannot give everything to people that just take. You cannot empty yourself out if they're not also filling you back up again. It's yet another sort of legacy that goes back to this polling thing. Giving to people without actually getting something back. It used to be that when you gave something, you knew that those people were in your community. What if they're not in your community? What if you're just giving and you're pouring it out on the world? You might as well just be pouring it on the street and letting it run down into the gutter. A lot of America's money has gone that way. I actually found a video of a lady. Maybe I'll play it for you tomorrow. She said she has a PhD from Oxford, and she's at the war crimes office of the State Department. How many of you knew that there was a war crimes office? I want to look into find out how many people actually work there. Because for every 10 government employees, you're looking at $1 million worth of corporate spending. You know? For every 100-person department, we're looking at $10 million. That's just the average. I just put them at 100,000. It's at least 100,000 for somebody who makes $60,000 or $70,000 plus government benefits. That's what it costs the American taxpayer. $1 million for your average government employee, who, generally speaking, 80% of them aren't doing anything. They're basically useless. So whose fault is that? It might actually be the fault. And in no relation to that story, although it does relate to what my wife had to say about it this morning, U.S. fighter jet just fell off an aircraft carrier, the Navy says, and it sunk into the ocean. It's an F-18 Super Hornet. And the first question my wife had about it when I brought it up was a woman in charge of the aircraft carrier? It was an F-18E Echo fighter jet. It rolled off the side of a carrier and sank to the bottom of the Red Sea. I assume they're going to have to go pull it up. An enlisted crew member and a second crew member were inside the tractor that was transporting it across the deck, and apparently they jumped out in a time, and the damn thing rolled off the deck. I looked at Jesse Kelly, who had a post about this. Jesse Kelly is a prior Marine, and he talked about how when they lost a K-bar knife, which is a street cost, like government cost is probably like $100, but like street cost, you can get one for like 50, 60, 70 bucks, something like that. A K-bar knife with the USMC on it. They lost one in the middle of training, and they paid for it for the rest of the day. Just sweat, calluses, pushing up the ground, getting crushed. I remember doing a movement where we lost one of the, what was it? Was it a blade? It was a blade antenna, a 3-foot blade antenna that was folded up on a radio. We did a 6 or an 8 kilometer land nav movement. When we got to the final point, each time we got to one of the points, a new member of the team, because we were doing team land nav. The lieutenant was like theoretically running the map, and everybody else was going. And then you'd set up comms, you'd make comms with the base camp. And every single time we got to a new point, all 5 points or 6 points every kilometer or so, we would check in at the base camp making comms. So you'd have to set up your radio and prove that you could doff your pack, set up a thing, run the antenna up, make the comms, get a positive return, and then you would go and you would move to the next point. We went like 6 or 8 kilometers, whatever the hell it was. The last point, one of the dummies that was in my group, one of my little younger airmen in his late teens or early 20s, he goes to make his check-in. We've done the entirety of the course. We are at the second to last point. And when he goes to make his check-in, he doesn't have his blade antenna. It's not there. We walked over every inch of ground, every single thing that we walked over, looking for that freaking 3-foot antenna, which probably only costs like maybe $100 tops. We had 5 men just scouring North Carolina looking for the damn thing. And when we found it, we got it, then we had to go all the way back to where we started and make the check-in. And then he did it. So our 4 to 5 point time was like the entire time of, the entire exercise times 2, because it was twice as long. We did the whole thing. And then we made it to the last thing. And our last point, we did it all in night nav. And we didn't have anything for it. We didn't have goggles. We didn't have flashlights. It was a no light situation. So we were just walking through the bush, because that's what you do. What happens when you lose an aircraft that falls off? And as far as I can tell, what they usually do, because this is on the Truman, this is on the USS Truman, they had just relieved, that same aircraft was involved in a collision with a container ship in the Suez Canal recently and lost their commander. Here's the thing. The question is who's getting promoted in these spaces, and why is no one double checking the work? There's an anecdotal theory that I want to float out there. I saw this from a guy called Bowtie Daddy. He had an entire post, which I'm doing 2 posts here that came out of X, but I think this one is relevant, and I think it's important because it comes from the same kind of background place. This is from the pilot end of the Air Force. He said, I grew up, this is just a direct quote from his post, I grew up in the old AFSOC air component, the one where you needed a minimum of 500 hours on a regular slick C-130 before you could even apply. AFSOC is the Air Force Special Operations Command. That's where they do the special operations missions. If you want to get on like an AC-130 gunship, you wanted to go out there and drive like the single most dangerous thing to ground troops in the world. It's a C-130 that has a howitzer on the inside of it and a bunch of machine guns and grenade capabilities. It is just like a death dealer. They called it Spooky and some other things. It is a devastating weapon system. Before you could even apply to go fly, you needed 500 hours in the regular C-130s. He said, I watched flight instructors rip the controls from the left seater. In other words, the one who was doing training. I've seen flight engineers push throttles up without even asking and cuss out the pilots because we weren't making a climb at a gradient that was going to get us to clear the mountain. I've seen aircrew, young, old, black, white, brown, male, female, get absolutely berated during hot washes or after actions or debriefs when they failed in training. I've seen grown women cry after their missions executions were torn apart after an after action report. Why did not an experienced pilot take control of the helo? We're talking about the Black Hawk crash that happened in Washington, D.C. Why did a pilot not take control of the helo? And he says in all caps, because he was afraid to offend the pilot. That's the climate we live in. We don't train anymore. There's no more 500-hour requirement for AFSOC. People are scared to offend. They're scared to enforce. They're scared to give feedback. We failed this generation, the next generation, the cell phone generation. We failed them by not giving them hard and aggressive public commentary to make them better. And we've promoted people that didn't belong in those roles. I was thinking about the Coast Guard story of the Coast Guard troop sailor who had the illegal alien wife that got deported. And I was remembering, I have this clip from Jesse Kelly. Again, he talked about the K-bar. There's a whole post about that if you guys want to go follow him. It's Jesse Kelly DC on X. This clip I've been sitting and laughing about by myself for a couple weeks, and I want to play it for you because I think it's relevant. Now, it talks about the culture, and this is what Trump was put in to reduce and maybe eliminate if he can. At least DOD recognizes this being a problem. I don't see the same recognition in some of the other departments.
Do you remember Linda Fagen? Coast Guard? Commandant? Remember, maybe the name Fagen rings a bell.
We currently have nearly 40% women enrolled at the Coast Guard Academy. I'm really excited about the talent and the diversity that I see coming through the academy.
Really excited about the diversity of it. Is she excited to make the Coast Guard more lethal, better, sharper? No. She's excited. The Fagen way is excited about, do we have enough women in here? Do we have enough gays in here? Do we have enough? But Fagens are everywhere. We have a Fagen problem throughout the United States government. It's not like she's a one-off. You could go through every single military branch. Fagen. IRS. Fagen. The ATF's all Fagens. The whole thing. Every single branch of the government has Fagens throughout it. And this is our problem. You have to get these cancerous Fagens out of the government or they will destroy your organization, just like they destroyed Disney, just like they destroyed Hollywood, just like they've got it just like why you have to see, and racism in the end zone in the NFL. You thought the Fagens were just in the civilian world? There's a Fagen in every single office building in the United States government.
He's not wrong. There's Fagens everywhere. I remember listening at the time and thinking like, God, this is such a fun clip. I got to hold on to it for later. If you weakly give up the things that are so important, if you roll over and you let people that have no business being there, you're going to ruin the entire management culture. The whole point of being in the military, why it's different than being a civilian, is because they can just berate you and they can drop you on your face and put physical consequences. And that's the culture. And it's good. It makes people stronger and better and faster and more lethal and more dangerous, which means you have better protected Americas. Or you get this, where people are scared and they don't want to tell people that they're not the same, that you're not equal to the task. I had somebody that was telling me, my daughter would be such a great FBI agent. I was like, are you a big fan of DEI? And they were like, no, I think it's terrible. And I was like, okay, well, every single woman who is an FBI agent, every single one of them took a job from a man because they didn't meet the same physical standards. Are you good with that? Like, that's the America we have to look at. They've already showed us what it looks like overseas, by the way, folks. And this is the thing that I thought was the most telling. This was also a question that was done right next to Chad Prather asking about the DOJ whistleblowers. This was asked, and this is a serious, actual conversation that is being had in the White House about people in Britain, which might as well be the same thing as what's going on with the snow Mexicans. The British have also shown us what it looks like if you fail at the mission of claiming back the insanity. Check this out. What about British people coming here for asylum? Isn't that a funny reversal of 300 years, 250 years?
In Britain, we have had over a quarter of a million people issued non-crime hate incidents. As we speak, there are people in prison for quite literally reposting memes. We have extensive prison sentences and for tweets, social media posts, and general free speech issues. Would the Trump administration consider political asylum for British citizens in such a situation?
Well, to your latter question, it's a very good one. I have not heard that proposed to the president, nor have I spoken to him about that idea, but I certainly can and talk to our national security team and see if it's something the administration would entertain.
Yes, please.
To your first...
Whoa, how crazy is that, right? That's where we're at in the world right now. And by the way, that is actual asylum, when your government is going to prosecute you for things that are wrong. If you're following us over on Rumble, make sure you've given us a like. If you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate you as well. Make sure you're liking over there. Leave a comment. I'm trying to address all the comments on both sides. I'm trying to at least read them at the very minimum. Locals, you can support the program financially if you're interested in it. You can also get things a little bit early. You'll get the Sunday sit down on Saturday at kylesaraphin.com. And then Spotify, easiest way to share it with somebody. You can get audio or video as you're driving around. You can switch between them. It's at kylesaraphinshow.com. You don't even need to download the app. It is free over there. There's no subscription fee to use Spotify. We appreciate that. All I'm saying is, folks, this is a real problem. Like, it's a thing where they are now looking over and going, hey, have we lost the complete thread? The Canadians obviously did. Maybe because they did a speech like this. This was the contender who just lost. His name is Pierre, Polivier, whatever. I don't know. I don't do French names. Sorry. This is him trying to get the Canadians to get really, really excited and riled up in order to vote for a more conservative platform. Check this out.
Good people who have traveled from villages near and far, lend me your ears. That's disgusting. Hear me. Men the likes of Prince John and Rottingham must be stopped. Stopped from taxing us into poverty. Stopped from taking from us what is rightfully ours. If we stand up to them, all together as one, we can win the day. We shall go on to the end. We shall not flag or fail. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall defend our isle, whatever the cost may be. We shall never surrender. Then they shall say of us, never have so many, oh so much, to serve you.
Sorry, that's not it. It was this one.
The gentleman asked in French about President Trump's comments on me. The president says that he doesn't like me. He doesn't think that I'm a MAGA guy. I am not. It is true that I am Canada first. I am only for Canada. I'm fighting for the interests of this people and this country. And if that upsets foreign leaders, including the American president, I'm fine with that, because I have one job to do, and it's to fight for this country. And let me be also clear. We will never be the 51st state. We will be self-reliant, sovereign, and stand on our own feet. We will be an independent and a sovereign country, and I will always stand up for our flag and our people.
Thank you. And we will never give up. and we all never surrender. Anyway, same kind of vibe right there. All Fagans, all the way down. Well done, Jesse Kelly. We appreciate you guys being here today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That's sort of our little, that's our little taste of what's going on in the world. 100 days. Here's to 100 more. Hopefully we actually get a little bit more traction on those. If you guys, I'm starting to go check the mailbox, so we've had it for about a week and change. If you want to write to the show, you can always do that at 9073 West State Highway 29. It's Suite 110, Box 509 in Liberty Hill, Texas. It's a good hill to die on. Liberty Hill, Texas, 78642. Again, 9073 West State Highway 29, Suite 110, Box 509. I tried to get a longer mailing address, but that was the longest one they have. So that's what we got for you. Thanks so much for all of you guys that want to send no live animals. All right, God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful day. Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. If you're sticking around on Rumble, we'll go to the American Radicals podcast next.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.